get started.
Yeah, not yeah.
I don't want to take off running. Take off running in the middle of the interview.
Right.
Are we ready?
Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, everyone's ready. 8, 7, 6, 5,
Yep.
4, 3.
This is really professional.
Yeah. Well, the whole point is.
All right,
the
welcome
kids.
to the MSBA. My name is Rachel Buckaloo, and this is Jordan Witt. And we're here from the Little Falls Community High School, where we're seniors, and we're with our Flyer Media Productions, here to kind of facilitate a conversation with you guys about public education. Just a warning, we are on the floor here at the convention, and there's a demonstration going on behind us where they're actually breaking glass. So we're going to have some pretty intense background noise for a little while at the beginning.
Okay.
All right, so if you guys could introduce yourselves and talk about your organization a little bit. We'll start with whoever.
Well, I'll start, if that's okay, gentlemen.
Absolutely.
They always say ladies first,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
I am Miranda Beard, president of the National School Boards Association, which the members are state associations all across the United States of America. And their members consist of 90,000 school board leaders all across the country who have the impact on 50 million children all across America. So it's pretty intense advocacy organization in Washington, D.C. is where it's based. And what we do, we advocate legislatively, legally, and public as far as communications is concerned on behalf of children all across America.
So I'm Kirk Schneiderman, Executive Director of the Minnesota School Boards Association, and we're one of Miranda's members. So there's 50 of them, and we belong to NSBA. But we have the 333 public school districts and school boards who are our members, and here today as part of their training. And that's one of our core pieces too, is about preparing board members, advocating for board members, and then thirdly is preparing them to do their job as school board members. Because we believe that if you have a high-functioning school board, you're going to have a high-functioning school. So thanks for joining us today, and I appreciate all you do. Thanks.
And my name is Paul Drange. I'm the Director of Regional Programs at National Joint Powers Alliance, and we are a service cooperative here in the state of Minnesota. We serve Region 5, and one of the schools that we serve is Little Falls Public Schools. So thanks for having me today.
Thank you.
And I'm Fred Nolan, the Executive Director of the Minnesota Rural Education Association. We represent over 200 school districts across greater Minnesota, and we advocate at the Capitol, and we communicate with our members about what goes on at the Capitol. And we're one of the only organizations in the state that has administrators, teachers, board members, higher education representatives, all on the same board. It's the old NEA model that all the people working in education and community have to work together. And so we're very happy to be here. Thank you for inviting us.
Hi, I'm Gary Amoroso. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Association of School Administrators. We represent all of the superintendents throughout the state of Minnesota, as well as other district-level administrators such as directors of curriculum and instruction, directors of technology, special educators, things of that nature. We have two core functions within our organization. The first is to provide professional services to our members, ranging from professional development opportunities, as well as providing other types of services to help them be more successful in working with their staff and students on a daily basis. And secondly, we advocate at the Capitol for public policy that we believe is beneficial to every child within the Minnesota public school systems. And thank you for inviting me.
Thank
Awesome.
you.
Thank you guys all for being here today. Our first question we have for you today is, when you look at public education, besides funding, what do you see as the biggest challenges facing public education? And Gary, if you'd like to start.
Okay, thank you, Jordan. I think when you look at that situation, you've mentioned funding, so if we take funding off the table, one of the things that I have a great concern about is the public perception of public schools. So often everything we read is a negative. And I truly believe if we are going to continue to meet the needs of our students and continue to grow and truly help our students develop, we've got to feel better about ourselves as public educators. We need to embrace public schools that truly, in order to have a functioning democracy, you need a public school system that truly prepares students. And I think that we need to almost do a reset of how our country views its public schools, and we need to embrace public schools and not look for the negatives. And if that's something that we can do over time, I believe that we will continue to serve our children well.
Awesome.
Great question and great answer, by the way.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Also, it's very important with the changing demographics of America and the increasing child poverty that we have ways to support students, that we have ways to meet them culturally. So we're attuned to, and we're speaking with them and not to them. And we really engage students. They're really engaged in their learning. It's not just pouring in knowledge, but they're really constructing their knowledge, and they're engaged in projects and really wanting to come to school. And so it's more internal. His is more external. But if we do a really good job internally, I think we'll gain that public perception.
Thanks, Fred. And I would just add, to build on something Gary said about perception, we also need to increase that perception because of teacher shortages that we're seeing across the country. And my perspective is more in our region here in the middle of Minnesota, but I think this is a problem across the board, where people looking to get into education as a career also have to see public education in a positive light and with a good perception. So with what Gary said we need to work on, that would also have a positive impact on attracting more professionals to the teaching profession and helping have those professionals available to have that positive impact on students.
Right. So all great answers. I agree with all of them. Right. I mean, so I think one of the things that we, as an association, one of the things that we're trying to get our school boards and school districts to be prepared for is the changing demographics. And this is a little bit what Fred's talking about. But from free and reduced counts to homeless counts to a more diverse Minnesota to a more diverse America, one of the things that public schools do really well is educate all of those kids. And so I think one of the biggest challenges for our board members and the public school system is preparing them for that. And so they know that things are changing. It's not like it was in the 1950s or 1960s, and we need to be prepared and be visionary about that, because in the long term, what you want is you want these kids, your public school graduates, to go on to college, become productive citizens, and work and contribute to the great United States that it is. So preparing our board members for that is probably one of the biggest challenges coming forward.
I'll piggyback on what the gentlemen have already talked about. Nationally, we're seeing the trends that they're talking about. So we're looking at ways to create equity and excellence in terms of providing information, programs that school board leaders all across this country can use to help students be successful. I truly believe that every child has a purpose in life, regardless to their background, regardless to their gender, regardless to their socioeconomic status. Every child was born with a purpose. So our job as school leaders all across this country is to make sure equity is there, regardless to where they've come from, to make sure every child has the opportunity to learn, be successful, regardless of where they come from. So that is a challenge for us. But guess what? People are talking about it. In other words, the cat has been let out of the bag. Now what are we going to do to solve some of the issues that we're facing on a regular basis?
As a student, it's really great to hear that. The thing is, it's not about making accommodations so much as it is about having personalized learning, having the kids feel like everything is relevant, purposed when they're there, getting an education. So the second question is, what is the common ground between Democrats and Republicans in regards to public education? A little political here now.
Yeah.
Whoever wants to start.
Well, I always say, is there not a righteous cause? That righteous cause is really the children. So regardless to our politics, our focus should never change in terms of what we are here to do, whether we're Democrats, whether we're Republicans, when it comes to our school board leadership or school leadership. Our focus should be strictly on the children. And sometimes you have to put the politics aside in order to do what you need to do. So that should be the laser focus that we have, regardless to who the president might be, regardless to who the Secretary of Education might be. Our job as school board leaders is to be laser focused, making sure every child is educated in this country.
Yeah, and I don't know how you add to that. I mean, that is so so correct. It's so right and on so many levels. You know, and it's unfortunate that whether we like it or not, that education has become a political piece. But by and large, when we talk to our board members, who are Republicans and Democrats themselves, that's what we tell them to focus on. If there's one commonality that they can focus on, is focus on the end product, those kids graduating, those kids performing well. So the party designation among school board members is another issue that probably shouldn't happen, but in reality, as in urban centers, that does happen. And so it shouldn't be a political issue. It is, and I think by and large, if we focus on the students, focus on the outcomes, good things are going to happen.
I would just add briefly, going back to that teacher shortage, part of my answer from earlier, there's other industries that are seeing shortages in employees as well. And generally speaking, the private industry and private business have more support from Republicans, with small business, chambers of commerce, that kind of thing. And there's probably a lot of room to say to those folks, you need employees. Where are those employees going to come from? Most likely it's a public school. So how do we align technical education in a more intentional way to bring those potential employees to the business and market that Republicans have generally served more in a political manner? So there's room to make some alignments there based on the needs that exist both in education and with the small business community and private industry.
Right. And the great thing about Miranda's answer and the other answers is that there's no disagreement about the goals. Everybody wants kids to learn, they want them to be successful, they want them to have the best possible life. It's a discussion and argument about the means. It's not about the goals. And the second thing, from rural perspective, many of our legislators, regardless of the party label, they're very pragmatic. They're local mayors or they've been in city councils, and they tend to figure out how can we support our local schools because they're the hub of rural communities. And so we have little less issues in terms of ideology working with both parties, and MREA is very proud to be able to be bipartisan that way.
Right.
And we're looking forward to working with the new legislators and having meetings with them. But we're all agreed on the same goal. We just have to keep people focused on the prize,
And
quality.
The only thing I would add to any of it is part of our responsibility in working with our legislators is helping them to find common ground.
Right.
Because I think, as I've heard, we all want our children to be successful.
Correct.
I don't think there's a legislator in Minnesota that doesn't want to see children be successful.
Mm-hmm.
But as Fred said, it's about the means, and part of what our job is to help bring those different perspectives together and find where do we have common ground. Too often we focus on where we have our differences.
Yep.
Right.
Let's start with where do we have common ground. Let's see what we can do for all of our kids and take it from there. And so it's a challenge, but it has to be done.
Right.
Okay, so just one more political question then. The philosophical difference between Republicans and Democrats. What do you think would be the easiest to overcome with that? You said everyone is looking for the common ground, the common goal. The kids are the future of America, but what difficulties do we still have to overcome with politics getting in the way of that?
Well, go ahead.
Go ahead. No.
Basically, one of the things that frustrates me personally is we just had an election, and people are already talking about 2018. And so what I get concerned about at times is when members of our legislature or the governor or any elected body begins to view what they do today in light of what will that do to my future political aspirations. And at times that can get in the way.
Yes.
And so one of the things we try and do is stay in the moment, talk about our kids only get one shot. If I'm in third grade this year, I don't get a reset necessarily in 2 more years.
That's right.
And so we try and work with our legislators and work with our governor and our other elected officials to be in the moment. The laser focus is just a wonderful, statement, because that's what we need to do. And what can we do today? Let's not worry about 2 years from now, but what are the opportunities that exist today that will help us empower our classroom teachers, our parents, our communities to truly serve the needs of their children.
Right.
Thanks,
Right. And
Gary.
right now we're in the governing season. the campaigning is in the fall, and we want to try to keep those two seasons separate, okay? And as Gary said, when it bleeds into the governing session, at least in Minnesota, Miranda, the legislature has to adjourn in May by Constitution. And so we try to say that's the governing period, and we try to find common ground. We really try to work with the leadership to say there's ways you could get your goals accomplished. Let us suggest some ways that you can do that. And that's what we do as statewide organization advocates here, Kirk and myself and Gary, to try to give them some avenues that they can find that common ground or get some win-wins. But it's a struggle sometimes because they're very worried about what the campaigning is going to look like based on their votes.
I think we've kind of answered some of that in the first question with
Right.
What the common goal is and what is the end, the game. And it's
Right.
really to make sure that we're serving our students the best way that we can to meet the needs of not just their families and those students, but of the greater society where there's job needs, where there's needs in the community. Those are some of the, if we can keep those things at the forefront, sometimes those politics can fall to the wayside if that laser focus again, it comes back to that.
Yeah, and so Minnesota, in Minnesota, nearly 40% of the state budget is dedicated to K-12 education. So it's a big part, it's a big goal for the state, and it's really important that they hear from school boards, school administrators, teachers about what are the priorities. But at the end of the day, one of the things that we always talk about, because our school boards are locally elected officials as well, and we like them to make decisions. And one of the things that we always talk about is trusting the school boards, because really the local folks have far greater concern and far greater investment in their own children, in their own communities, than perhaps people in St. Paul. So one of the things we always talk about is that funding stream and letting the local school boards, based on their community needs, achieve the goals that they have set out, but also meet the accountability measures that come forward as a result of not No Child Left Behind, but ESSA now. So those are, you just can't get politics out of it, partly because it's a 40% of the state budget, but that's our job as advocates and associations, is to make sure that that's a priority for the state.
I like the word collaboration. I think there should be more times and more opportunities for the Democrats, the Republicans, the independents, everybody coming together, understanding the common goal for all of us. I like speaking to the consciousness, putting all that aside to really speak to what's in the heart. With every student succeeds on the table, it will give our local school board leaders a better opportunity to create a learning environment that's more conducive for the students that are in their districts. I think with that power return to local control, local support, that's going to be very impactful. But I think also it's very important that whatever those goals are, the mission, the vision, that we need to be able to communicate that to the lawmakers that are creating policies and providing the funding. We need to make sure as school board leaders we share those philosophies and those ideas and what's next in our particular school districts. It is disheartening for me to hear about political leaders that make policies and set aside the funding and say this is how much you're going to get, and they never set foot in a classroom. They never visit the schools in the communities where people there voted them in office. But yet they can make policies and come up with ideas, and it trickles down to their communities, but yet they don't know what's going on in the public classroom. To me, that is a sad thing. But I think by communicating, collaborating, that we can change the dynamics.
An experience with technology that Rachel and I both have experienced is having iPads in our school. So that's a future of technology. What other futures do you think technology holds for public education?
Well, I would say, access is a big thing. I think that's one of the things, the broadband discussion and is a huge one. Because while it may be, you guys may be connected very well in Little Falls, folks in Northwest Minnesota may not be very well connected. So I think that to me is the very important first step, is to create those avenues, and there's a broadband task force that the governor's put together that MSBA sits on, that we've been advocating for that. So that to me is step one. It isn't very sexy, pretty basic stuff, but you got to have that connectivity, you know, and then you can build from that. And I think Minnesota's done a good job in establishing that and making it a goal. But it's also pretty expensive. But we want to make sure that we have 21st century classrooms for 21st century learners, right? And that's, technology is part of that. And we see great school districts like Matamidi that have great fab labs with 3D printers that are making prosthetics and furniture and mixing technology with career and tech pieces. So it's not going away. And it's an important piece that we build those basics first.
And another thing we've experienced is internships throughout our school, so we get to actually go out in a field that we're interested in and experience it one-on-one with the field. And I think it's an awesome opportunity.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that? Are you seeing that a lot more now?
Sure. Educational experiences are no longer within the four walls
Right.
of a building.
Right.
Educational experiences are now, it can be across the world with the use of technology.
Right.
So you can have experiences that you couldn't have dreamed of a decade plus ago. And so those are things that I think are going to play a key role in helping students not only grow, but to learn and explore things that they may want to pursue as they continue to move forward. So we no longer have the constraints of four walls. It's unlimited.
Right, and
I
this
almost
webcast.
see it. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the webcasting that we're doing right now is a great tool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There's classrooms that are webcasting internationally,
Yep.
and classroom to classroom, whether synchronous or asynchronous. And so this has really opened up the school, just what you're doing here.
Yep.
So yeah,
Perfect.
And that experiential learning piece, with the forward-thinking schools that are allowing more of that to happen, there's data to show that those students are performing better in other areas of their education as well. So the more we can let that happen, the better off you'll be as students, and we'll be in getting children and people prepared for careers as well.
A stigma about millennials is that you hear students ask all the time, why are we learning this? But relevance is everything. Students want to experience things. They want to go out into the fields. They want to be critical thinkers, have creative experiences now. That's becoming more popular.
well, it's not only more popular, but in research, if students see a value beyond school, they're much more engaged in it.
They are.
And it's not just relevance to them, but they actually see that it actually has a use in society as an adult or whatever, and it just creates greater interest. But Miranda, you wanted to say something a little earlier, I
Well,
thought.
I think it's a way to engage students and move them to the next level. In some ways, I see it almost like an equalizer. And it makes learning more interesting when you can incorporate the technology piece in the learning process. So I think it's important and it's valuable. Some see it as a distraction, but the students, if you were to ask the students like yourselves, you see it more as something to enhance what you're doing and creating a better learning environment for you. Because you have it at home. Why not have it at your school and use it to your benefit?
Awesome. So we have another question by Rachel.
Okay, so is education in Minnesota, in your opinion, this is an interesting one, doing a good job preparing students to use technology throughout their lives? Are we actually utilizing that?
I think so.
I would say that it's really a district by district, building by building answer to that. Minnesota is very much local control. There are state standards. There are some standards in technology infused in the standards, but it's really what the initiatives, such as leaders of your community and schools that have done, that have provided this initiative. There are other similar ones, but there's places where students don't have these opportunities.
I think it will be a continuous process. I mean,
Yes.
I think you think back to the districts who had the first Apple IIes.
Yes.
There were some that were in front of others, and so I think that's the important part for communities, administrators, and school boards is to be able to set that vision. If technology is going to be part of the equation, then you need to hire the superintendent and the technology directors who are savvy enough to build those future opportunities for kids and in the classroom, but also outside of the classroom as well.
I think it's driven too by something Kirk brought up earlier, the expansion of broadband.
Yeah.
And our state has shown now some initiative finally in making some
Right.
investments in that and infrastructure. And with that backbone in place, it allows teachers and schools that have that forward thinking and those ideas to implement some of those technology pieces that you talked about. So the more we can invest in that infrastructure, the more options it gives schools. But as Fred said, it's really a mixed bag right now, and part of that's driven by the access to that technology.
One last question for you guys today is, what makes you enjoy your job so much? When you wake up each day, what motivates you to go to work? We just have a little bit of time here, so if somebody wants to answer that.
The opportunity to have an impact on the next generation.
Right.
That's motivated me. This is my 42nd
Right.
year in the business, or 41st, and that's why I get up every day, is the ability to work with decision makers, to work with educators, to work with students, and hopefully leave a little bit of a better world than what we've inherited, and have the next generation do the same thing for the following generation.
Right.
It's just, there's nothing better. It's the best. It's not only a vocation, it's an avocation.
Right. Right. It really is a passion. Yep.
I have the pleasure of working in our region where the three of us live and serving the schools around in Little Falls and around it, and that's what motivates me every day. We live in a rural area. We have challenges that come with that, but we also have a lot of opportunity that comes with where we live and the opportunities that are out there for us. So that it makes it easy to get up every day and go to work. That's for sure.
Absolutely, and you know the solid tradition of public school that has helped build America today, right? So that's a part of it, and you want to continue that legacy. You want to make sure that doesn't move away, because there's always that threat about privatization, create a business model out of our schools. But we know that public schools bring in anybody who shows up at their door and does a really good job with that. And so that for me is a passion piece for me, is to not only get up each morning and know that you have duty and responsibility to help your board members see that vision, but also the future of the state as well as the nation.
Well, for me, I'm a product of public education, and it changed my life. So I'm determined to use my gift, my talents, my abilities to help others. In other words, what I'm saying is I want to die empty and leave a legacy behind. The importance of using everything that you have to serve others, particularly those that are the most vulnerable, which happen to be our children.
All right, with our last minute here, I just want to thank you guys for everything you do. This has been a really great conversation. I think we both learned a lot just from talking.
Great.
It does mean a lot to us to hear the voice so excited and passionate about what they do.
Thank you all for the
Thank
opportunity.
Thank
Thank you
you.
for everything
All right,
you do.
yeah.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thank you.
Very nice.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.
Fred?
Okay,
done.
Kurt.
See ya.
Thank you.
Okay,
We
yep,
appreciate
thanks.
it.
Thanks,
Good
Kurt.
to see you again.
Yeah, good to
Yes.
see you too.
Absolutely. Love.
Picture with all of our students. You guys can just sit.
Oh, okay.
All right.
We'll put them behind.